Welcome into the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Got a good show for you today, folks. This Thanksgiving Day show, I got to say, first of all, I'm thankful for you guys. First of all, I want to bring you a special show today, and that we're going to talk a little bit about you've traveled to your family, maybe you're staying home today, and you want to travel to somewhere else. You want to be maybe somewhere other than home today. We're going to talk about traveling around the world, and we're going to talk a little bit about a brand new book out there from our good friend Mike Ricksecker. And it's called Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. So we're going to talk a little bit about portals, stargates, and the whatnot. I know we're going to have to expand our horizons a little bit today, but that's good. It's a good thing. We first heard about stargates from another guest of ours that we had on last year. So this is going to be an interesting conversation because I do have some places that I want to take Mike today, interestingly enough. And this came up actually a little bit in a talk that Mike and I had and I think he kind of beamed a little bit when I brought it up at a talk we had at Michigan Paracon. So I'm glad we can expound on it a little bit today. Mike Ricksecker is the author of Travels Through Time, A Walk in the Shadows in Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. He is a paranormal researcher featured on Ancient Aliens, The Unexplained, The Alaska Triangle, Fright Club, and Gaia TV. He directs the docuseries The Shadow Dimension and produces videos on ancient mysteries and the supernatural. Mike hosts the Edge of Rabbit Hole live stream, Connecting the Universe class, and Haunted Road Media, which won a 2019 Shockfest Award. An Air Force veteran with a background in intelligence, he leads annual tours in Egypt, exploring ancient technologies and stargates, backed by 30-plus years of research into unexplained phenomena. We'll have a link not only to his websites, but we're also going to link up to the trips as well, because I highly encourage you guys to check these out. I would love to go on one of these trips. We're going to bring him in now. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back to Darkness Radio, Mike Ricksecker. Mike, first of all, thank you for coming back on the program. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me back, Tim. We always have some fantastic conversations. And yeah, that was a great panel that you hosted there at Michigan Paracon. We had a lot of fun with that one.
Absolutely. I had a great time with it. And one of the things I was excited to bring in, and I threw a curveball, and I saw the look on Shane and Taddy's face when I threw it in, but I saw you beam when I brought it up, was bringing in wormholes, portals, and stargates. And I knew Taddy she shot me such a dirty look when I brought it up, but the reason I brought it up, not just for the book, but the reason I brought it up was because I wanted to throw in the little bit of the catch of, there's so much that ties into ancient history, current history with wormholes, portals, stargates, and how it ties into ancient history and today and paranormal phenomena. And I think we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to that. And it doesn't quite explain other phenomena and how it ties together with the paranormal. It's kind of the missing link, so to speak, of how things get around and how things happen, isn't it?
In a lot of ways, yeah. So I have my platform, Connected Universe Portal, and basically, the whole premise behind that in the series of books that I'm writing right now, the Connecting the Universe series, is all about how all these different things are interconnected. And I'm going to have to give Heather a little grief for that if she shot you a look, because she listens to my podcast and I talk about this quite a lot. So, but she's awesome.
Yes, she is.
Yes, she is. But yeah, when we're talking, in a lot of ways on the surface, when you're like, oh, stargates and things like this, it sounds like it's something, further beyond what we're talking about when it comes to the paranormal. But again, it's all connected. Everything comes down to energy, resonance, frequency, vibration. And so when we're talking about some of these different, what we call supernatural phenomena that come into our plane of existence here, that method of coming into this world is very, very similar to what we're talking about when we're talking stargates, portals, this sort of thing. Is that it's that that frequency, that vibration of two, whether it could be a time slip, two moments syncing up. It could be dimensional, where two different dimensions are syncing up their frequency together for a moment, allowing a door to open and things to be able to pass in and out. You have like a lot of these, Sasquatch stories in the woods where, I saw, these, balls of light or flashes of light or things like this along with the Sasquatch. And so one of the ideas is that maybe they're using some of these portals to move in and out of, our plane of existence. So yeah, it's all very well connected.
I want to start out on one end. I want to end up eventually in the second part of the program. I want to talk extensively about your dealings in not only the southwest part of America, but also in Egypt, and how fascinating, not only your fascination with Southwest America, but also with Egypt and the tours in Egypt that you do, because I find ancient Egypt fascinating, and some of the information you've gotten into in Egypt fascinating as well. I want to start first of all with it's no longer a concept. I mean, science has said wormholes are a thing, and that they're physically a thing, that we can use them to traverse from one end of the galaxy to the other. So how do we go from theory to actual physical being? How does this work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the whole idea really, started with Albert Einstein, Nathan Rosen talking about, they call it the Einstein-Rosen bridge, but that's essentially the idea of being able to fold space and time together, connect 2 points across the cosmos with a tunnel by being able to fold it over like that, therefore creating a shorter route. And so, that's been a theory for a while, and mathematically checks out and all that sort of stuff. But, we've seen it pop up in our science fiction films and that sort of thing. But yeah, they actually are in the lab. Just 2 years ago, the report came out, it was Fermilab, and they had created a baby wormhole in the lab, and they had created, it's on the quantum level, but they had taken two small black holes that they had created on this in this quantum environment and connected it with a wormhole and sent a message through it. So very, very small scale, but this is something that science is, actually progressing toward. And, even when we talk portals, out in space, just outside our planet, there are what NASA has called, they've recognized these are portals. They try to steer away from using that name.
Yeah.
And they call them X points. And this is where the Earth's magnetism and the solar wind just collide. And these portals, these X points, open up out there, and they allow the electrons and protons from the solar wind to enter into the Earth's atmosphere much quicker. And so what I find fascinating about this is that they've had satellites up there for almost 10 years now to study these things, and they have no predictive model for them whatsoever. They don't know when they're going to open. They don't know how big they're going to open at. They don't know when they're going to close. None of that. They study them, but there's no predictive model. So for me, this kind of adheres to our ideas of portals down here on Earth. And when we talk about, people going missing in the wilderness, that, are they stepping into, some sort of portal and disappearing? Because, some fascinating stories of, you're walking with your buddy on the path and disappears, gone. Sometimes some of those people return. And the stories that they tell are fascinating, that, they were walking on the path in the woods, heard a noise off to the side of the path, took 2 steps to go take a look, see what the noise was, couldn't find anything, turned back to get on the path. The path is gone. Where did they go? How did they get lost out in the middle of nowhere when they only took 2 steps? So, but yeah, this is something that science has actually recognized does exist.
There's fascinating stories of people talking about not only Sasquatch being there and then gone, or, prints leaving, you start tracking Sasquatch prints and then they're gone, or one footprint and then nothing. And it's hard to explain where these prints go, right? And you've got apers, and you've got the ones who believe metaphysical beings, that they have to go somewhere, right? There's got to be these portals that they step into and then they're gone. But why can't we believe in a mixture of the two? Why can't we and again, we can use X points or portals or whatever language we want to use, but why can't we believe that a portal could be very much a physical happening, much like picking a piece of clover or the fact that a rock exists? Why can't a portal be a physical thing and not necessarily a metaphysical thing?
Well, and that's where we're just really talking about terminology, because it is physical and it's metaphysical. So I always like Dr. Hans Holzer's quote where he would say, there is no supernatural world. Everything that we experience is natural. Mm-hmm. And same thing that what we're talking about here. It's not. There's not really a metaphysical world. We use that for all these different. It's kind of like a catch-all for all these different unusual things that are a little bit more esoteric in nature, or kind of the the modern slang is woo-woo, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it all exists. It's all real. It's all very natural and a part of our universe. I think it's one of those because it's not as common. It's not your ordinary run of the mill sort of thing that you experience on the daily. Some people do, but your ordinary common person doesn't usually experience this sort of thing. So we chalk it up to it's metaphysical or supernatural or something like this. But it absolutely does exist, and it is a real part of our world and our universe. And it's just a matter of, sometimes people, I don't know if it's lucky, as luck would have it, they run into a portal out in the wilderness and find themselves lost. And I've been asked before, if I suddenly came across, standing right in front of me, here's the portal, like you can actually see it and experience it, I know it's there, would I step into it? And I'm like, absolutely, but I'm going to leave a note.
Yeah,
so people know where I'm going. But yeah, these things are a part of our world. Yeah.
Does it seem unusual to you that these portals would lead either to another dimension, another world, or maybe even just a step to the left? Because to me, it seems like, let's talk about Sasquatch in particular, and the cases of Sasquatch. Does it seem to you if Sasquatch is a being that's stepping between worlds, we'll put it that way, or between, let's say they're taking a physical timeout from this world. Okay. Let's say they're not cave dwelling monkeys, but in this case, if they truly are stepping into a portal and they're just stepping into their own realm and coming back. Okay. So it's just a step to the left and coming back, step to the left and coming back. And they truly are a creature from another dimension. And it's just a dimensional hop they're doing. Mm-hmm. Do you think that maybe when someone's trying to go after them or they're following them in their path, that they're truly stepping into their dimension and getting lost? Or the fact that when we're not finding their bones, they're taking those remains back to their dimension?
Yeah, or they just pass away in their own dimension, so we're not going to find them anyway. But yeah, absolutely, I believe that can happen. We find that a lot in legend and lore when we talk like the fairy realm and that sort of thing. But we also see that in our UFO abduction cases, where it seems like people are finding themselves in these other realms, and I believe it's another dimension, because people will talk about how time just works very differently. They think they're gone for 5 minutes and it's really been a day or several hours or something like this. So Travis Walton was gone for 5 days, right? This sort of thing. So time works very differently, and if time is working differently wherever it is that they go, then that adheres to the idea of it being some other dimension. So yeah, if you're like chasing Sasquatch and you find yourself lost, time is working differently, that sort of thing, you may have stepped into its own dimension where things like that are going to work differently. So that's I will concur with you there.
How then in your opinion, how do time slips relate to these portals or X points? Is there something where we could actually jump into one of these and then reverse through time?
Yeah, when we talk time slips, I mean, that's really, again, everything coming down to frequency, energy, resonance, vibration. And I know we've talked about it before on the show in my previous book, Travels Through Time, and talking about how time doesn't really exist. It's just a man-made construct to describe our reality. And every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen are all here concurrently together. Each of those moments, I liken it to a stack of photographs, so I call it stack time theory, that each of those moments has its own frequency. So with the time slip, two of those moments are resonating at the same frequency together. Now, if you could consciously harness the ability to be able to set your frequency to move in and about these different moments, then that is something that... So, difference between a portal and a Stargate. So I believe, yes, a portal can take you to one of these other points in time. And I think that's where some of our missing persons are happening. They're finding themselves in other points in time. Some of our missing airplanes, I think that they end up in other points in time. And that's where some of our Thunderbird legends come from. Like they'll go back, hundreds of years, and indigenous people at the time, not knowing what an airplane is, would be like, oh, it's a big, loud, thunderous bird. It's the Thunderbird. It's, really like the Douglas Skymaster or something like this for, that went missing. But you could, if, so difference between a portal and a Stargate. So a portal naturally occurring, again, kind of like when I described the X points, they have no predictive model for, where they're going to open, how big they are, all that sort of thing. The Stargate is the idea of being able to harness that, an intelligent being able to harness that portal so it can open at will, and they can move in and about these things when they want. So in that sense, you could use a Stargate, which is harnessing the portal, to move in and about other dimensions, other points in time, things like this. Yeah. Okay.
I want to talk a little bit, first of all, about modern day aliens. Okay. There's and the name of the movie escapes me now. It was filmed off of the coast in California. And forgive me, the brain's not as sharp as it used to be as I'm getting older. You saw a bunch of Tic Tac aliens coming through a portal or a portal in the sky. It's something in the sky. I'm trying to remember what the name of the movie is. It's not Travis Walton's movie.
I was about to say,
yeah, it was no
fire in the sky. But that's not.
No. I had the movie maker on. It's gonna hit me too, Mike. But these Tic Tacs come out in. Someone's gonna email me and tell me what it was and say, Tim, you had them on the program. You should know what it was. But you see these Tic Tacs all come out in mass force out of this portal, and it opens up. It's right off Catalina.
Okay.
And you see them. You see this portal open up, boom, they all come off out of this portal. So we have video evidence. All these different scientists are filming this over days, and they're filming in different spectrums. Nothing to the naked eye, per se, right away, at least. They are catching it in regular time and regular video, but most of it was caught in different spectrums, other spectrums than regular video. Why is it that, in your opinion, are we catching it in different spectrums like infrared and other spectrums than our naked eye? Are we seeing these portals? What is it about these portals that they're not quite visible to the naked eye? What is it about these dimensions that they're existing on other planes?
Yeah, our eyes only see into a very narrow band of the spectrum. That's just human physiology. So that's why we use these other tools and other types of cameras to be able to try to get a glimpse of these different things. We got, our dogs and cats see better than we do. So that's why, you got the cat staring up at the corner, what's going on up there? That sort of thing. They always seem to catch that stuff. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Why is it so challenging for us to be able to see it? Or we might see something out of the corner of our eye and we turn and look and it's seemingly gone. But that's That's not really the case. It's our eyes are made of rods and cones, and we take in more light. In fact, we even see slightly into the infrared out of the corner of our eyes. That's where more the rods kind of bunch around there. The cones are more toward the front. So, it's just that comes down to human physiology. But those other there are plenty of other beings and life forms and things like that living in dimensions right beside us. So I find it kind of humorous when, like the Harvard research paper, which was mostly Harvard, and there was a guy from Montana that was involved in that, where they present this research paper, stuff we've been talking about for like decades. Like, it's, there's more and more evidence growing that there are extraterrestrials living alongside us in other dimensions. And it's like, really? Okay, well, we've been talking about this forever, and you're just, now this is new. But, I'm happy that they did that, because it's like, okay, we haven't been crazy all along. Here's some scientists that are actually talking about this. But what I find humorous about it is that, they're talking about extraterrestrials living alongside of us. Like, well, if they're living alongside of us here on Earth, they're not extraterrestrial, because that would be outside the Earth. They're actually Earthlings. Just a different dimension. So another term that's been used before, like John Keel and some others back in the day, would call them ultra-terrestrials, and that's kind of a more appropriate term. We have up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions according to our theoretical physics at this point. There may be more. And so it makes sense that there would be other life forms and beings and entities living in these other dimensions right alongside of us.
So then, Mike, would you consider, because a lot of people call these taller blonde aliens Nordics.
Nordics,
Would you consider the Nordics an ultra-terrestrial, not an extraterrestrial? Are they just living beside us in another dimension?
Yeah, for a lot of the stories that I've heard about Nordics, it sounds like they are just living alongside of us. So that would be more of an ultra-terrestrial rather than ET. An ET would be something that comes from another planet, and maybe they at some point did, right? But at what point? What's that? That crossing over moment of from the moment that they're an ET to now they are an Earthling. Like, my ancestors, most of them came from Europe, right? Well, at some point they were no longer Swiss, and then they were no longer German. They became Americans, right? So when did that designation happen? How many generations? So kind of same thing with these. If they could have come from some other planet somewhere, but how many generations do we give them? We just say, hey, they're Earthlings like us. They've been here.
Yeah. So you bring up an interesting point. You've got 11 different dimensions. They're all living side by side. At what point do we say, you've got Fermi's paradox out there saying, does life really exist out there? At what, and we've sent plenty of craft out there to look for life. At what point do we say, well, how much life truly exists out there as opposed to next to us? Do we believe that life is next to us, or do we believe that life is out there? Which is which?
Both. There are other life forms living beside us, and there are other life forms living out in the cosmos. And when it comes to Fermi's paradox, to me, it's perspective. And I actually addressed this in my previous book, Travels Through Time. I have an entire chapter on paradoxes. And with that, I think there's something about humanity that we are extremely arrogant. And so we have considered all other possible life out there to be extraterrestrial without ever really considering that to the entire rest of the universe, we are the extraterrestrials. We're the extraterrestrials to them.
True.
So just mathematically, you take, the Milky Way galaxy, which has 400 billion trillion, whatever the number is, it's astronomical, apropos. So we know of at least one planet in the Milky Way galaxy that has life, which is us. And so then you take the other billion, trillion, however many galaxies that are out there, and you apply that same math to those other galaxies. So, across the entire universe, just given that ratio, then we should have billions and billions of potential planets out there that have life. So it's just perspective and using a little math, and you get around Fermi's paradox. But I get it. And actually, just getting a little bit deeper into Enrico Fermi a little bit, it seems like he kind of regretted saying that.
Yeah.
Just like some of the other physicists as well, like Schrodinger with Schrodinger's cat. It's like that's the thing that everybody knows him for. And just he regretted using that example because that's what he became known for.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. I just figured for argument's sake, throw it out there and then.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. But it's
Yeah.
happening both. There are other beings living beside us. And we even find this throughout, old legends and lore, like we've talked about, indigenous traditions and things like this. If you go back to like some, like the American Southwest, the indigenous tribes there talk about the ant people and how the ant people helped them survive the great cataclysm, and where they took them into like underground realms and things like this. And I talk about this in the example I use is Montezuma as well. I mean, it just looks like a big sinkhole these days, but long time ago, it was wide open and cavernous and all this. And so the idea was that, during the Great Cataclysm, the ant people brought them down into this area to survive underground. But if your Great Cataclysm was a giant flood, well, it would fill that up, right? Mm-hmm. So was this really an entrance, a portal, or maybe even a Stargate into their world that still may have been underground, but in a different dimension somewhere where they could actually live and survive until the cataclysm had subsided?
All right. I tell you what, we're going to take our break here. We come back, we're going to distinguish the difference between portals, wormholes, and stargates. We're going to get into ancient Egypt. We'll get a bit into the Incan culture. And I want to talk about a place I find absolutely fascinating. When we had Timothy Hogan on the program, we talked about Elephantine Island a little bit. I want to get a little bit into that place as well. And I want to talk about the tours that you do in ancient Egypt. We've got a link to your website. We've got a link to the tours and everything in the description of this program. Mike Ricksecker is our guest. The book is fascinating, folks. You absolutely have to pick it up. Again, there's a link in the description of this program for it. Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. When we come back, we'll talk about the difference between Stargates and what we've been talking about, portals and wormholes. When we come back with Mike Ricksecker right here on the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. My guest, Mike Ricksecker. The book is Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. Before we went to the break, we were talking about portals and wormholes. In this segment, we're going to get into Stargates. A concept that was first brought up to me, personally, it was brought up to me by Timothy Hogan. And the way it was brought up was a little astonishing to me. I got to tell you, between you, me, and a bunch of listeners here, Mike, the way it was brought up to me, he started talking about these different pyramids that he was leading tour groups into. And he said, yeah, we get into all these different pyramids in Egypt that other people don't get into, these different tours. And in them, there are Stargates. And I'm going to have you explain what these Stargates are, Mike. And he said the information he gave was mind-blowing. And the reason I want you to flesh this out and tell us exactly what a Stargate is my mouth dropped and hit the desk. And I thought, wait a minute. Well, because what these are, what they do, to me, I thought, well, we always thought that the pyramids were established just to bury the pharaohs, right? Isn't that what they are? That's what we were taught in school.
Well, yeah, that's what we were taught in school. That doesn't mean we were taught the right information. So Tim and I differ a little bit here because the pyramids themselves were not the Stargates, but they helped to power the Stargates. So we find that
Yeah.
some of the temples, they have the Stargates, and you see the Stargate symbolism all over them. They house the Stargates, but then you would find, a pyramid there that would help power because, and scientifically, we've even shown this that the pyramids actually do harness energy from the ground and are able to store it inside the pyramid. So, but yeah, as far as housing bodies, so the smaller ones do. So there's different types of pyramids here, and like the Great Pyramid of Giza and the other large ones that are on there and the Giza Plateau, like the Bent Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, some of these really huge, enormous ones. It's that pyramid at Saqqara. They didn't house bodies. We have not found bodies there ever in those. But then, like, for example, Saqqara, just to the other side of the courtyard, you have a smaller pyramid, the Pyramid of Unas. And that one did. Okay, what's the difference? Why does the smaller one have it and the bigger one doesn't? And really, it's like those smaller ones were built by the dynastic Egyptians, looking at this great big thing and basically trying to mimic that. So when you look at the pyramids that actually did house the bodies, they're smaller in nature. When you go inside, they have hieroglyphs all over them, absolutely covered in hieroglyphs, just like the dynastic Egyptians did over all their buildings. You go into temples, you're covered in hieroglyphs. But like the Great Pyramid of Giza and these other ones, they don't have any hieroglyphs. You go into their walls and they're just sheer and flat, and there's nothing there. It was you just your eye can see this was built by somebody else because they didn't have some of these other things that the dynastic Egyptians did. So yeah, these were built by somebody else. They predated the dynastic Egyptians. Now that doesn't mean that Egyptian people, and this is kind of a contention where traditional archaeology is trying to, for one, they try to paint everybody that's talking about these alternative theories as like pseudoscientists and that sort of thing. But then they try to say, well, we're discrediting the ingenuity of the indigenous peoples and things like that. It's like, no, we're not saying that. We're just saying that there was an older version of their civilization, their ancestors or what have you, that created these. So for me, when I look at it, and just looking at history, I believe that you could say it was the Atlantean civilization, but Egypt was a part of that greater Atlantean civilization. So yes, the Egyptians that were part of that Atlantean culture that had developed these, and you had a great cataclysm, and people lost a lot of that information on how to build these huge, massive things, but they could build a smaller one and kind of mimic that. And I could imagine being a king at that time being like, okay, I can't get my guys to build the Great Pyramid of Giza, which, working around the clock 24 hours a day would take, I forget what the calculation is, but it would take like almost 100 years to do that. Somehow they got this thing built in 20 for this pharaoh. No, it doesn't make sense. But I could see Pharaoh saying, yeah, I want something like that. So I'll get my guys to build, something.
Yeah.
But you want to talk Stargates. So
But no, this is fascinating too. I mean, keep the stream of thought. I mean, that's
yeah. So yeah, when it comes to the Stargates, we find that in a lot of the temples, just all up and down the Nile, and you have the symbolism. It's right there in plain sight, where it's a set of hieroglyphs, and there's some shorthand for it. There's longer versions of it and that sort of thing. But essentially, what it comes down to is it's the word Saba. In fact, the gentleman that I do the tours with, Mohammed Ibrahim, it's what he's named his tour company, Saba Tours, which basically Stargate Tours.
Yeah.
And you have a few things going on where the hieroglyphs essentially starts with a folded sheet, which is an S in ancient Egyptian. And the other symbol to spell out the word is B. It's the foot. So that spells out your word, Saba. They didn't have vowels in the ancient Egyptian language. But then you have other glyphs there, which are called determinatives. They help us determine what the word is. And it's really plain. One is a star, the other is a gate. Star gate. So it's boom, right there, right?
Yeah.
And there's other versions of it where you might have the gate with a star above it and things like that. And we find these all over Egypt on basically adorning the gateways or doorways into temples or into what we would call the Stargate chambers. And within there, now we don't exactly know how they access the Stargates, but we have some different ideas and theories as to how it all worked. But yeah, there are actually Stargate chambers in like the Temple of Abydos, Luxor, Karnak, Dendera. They're really all over.
Was it Abydos where you said you go in and it looks like there had been a huge power surge, like something had blown out the gate? Or
that was Elephantine Island.
Was that Elephantine Island that's
Elephantine Island, at the top of the hill.
Okay.
Yeah, the entire temple has been knocked over. So it's the Temple of Khnum, which was built by Hatshepsut. Now there are 5 kings that basically used the Stargate designation. It was almost like a title for them. Like, I have the authority to operate the Stargate. And in fact, Hatshepsut's mortuary temple right there at Luxor, which is just on the east side of the Valley of the Kings, has like a perfect setup for a Stargate. But she also built this temple there on Elephantine Island, and you have the front courtyard, which it's in ruins, but then you just have this big gate that is standing there, and just back behind that, and the entire temple that had been back there is just completely blown open or blown over. And we're talking like 20-ton granite shrines and stuff like this, and it's just like some kid just knocked over his wooden blocks. So the idea here is that we don't know what happened, but perhaps when the Stargate was closed, or perhaps there's some disagreement between the ancient Egyptians and whoever was on the other side of that Stargate. And we believe it may have had maybe the ancient minds, or at least maybe a connection between the ancient Egyptians and ancient minds, some other middle civilization or culture or beings that maybe got upset and just decimated the whole thing and knocked everything over when they closed it.
So the concussive force you'd need in order to knock that over, that's nothing that any natural storm, any sandstorm, anything like that could pick up and move. That's something that you need a lot of power to push.
Yeah, extremely, extremely powerful. And sure, earthquakes happen. There actually are not a lot of earthquakes in Egypt. It's like, you have maybe a handful, you can count them on one hand, throughout history that have occurred.
Okay.
But, for the one part of the temple to be, again, it's in ruins, but not like this other part, which is just, you look at that gate and it's like, everything, although it's in ruins, standing kind of straight up over here, but on the other side, everything's just been, knocked over on its back. It's really strange and odd to look at it in that light. So, yeah.
Now, Elephantine Island has an interesting history. Can you give us the history of Elephantine Island and how its history came to be?
Yeah, Elephantine Island. So this is basically, it's right there by Aswan. And it's essentially a large, massive outcropping of Aswan rose granite that is sticking up out of the middle of the Nile River. And what's really wonderful about that is it provides a lot of energy for the temples there. So granite's about 55 to 60% quartz, or at least Aswan rose granite is. And so that's, your piezoelectric energy that's there. And so this is helping to harness this whole area. The interesting thing about Elephantine Island is there's a fascinating biblical story that goes along with this, that if you look at the Kebra Nagast, which is the great Ethiopian epic, which includes a story of the Ark of the Covenant, in which Queen of Sheba had once gone up to Israel, essentially hooked up with Solomon, for lack of a better term, they got together. And when she went home, she had become pregnant and gave birth to Melanick, her son. And when he became of age, when he got older, he decided to go back to Israel and visit his father. And so Solomon was trying to be kind of savvy about this. He recognized, okay, yeah, you're my son. But he was also thinking, oh, I could expand my kingdom here. This would be interesting. So, he's as Melanick is going to go back with his entourage and everything. He's giving them all these gifts. And one of those things was a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. Depending on which version of the tale you read, Melanick either switched out the Ark or maybe his entourage did. That part's a little iffy. Okay. And they went back south. Well, one of the places that they stopped was Elephantine Island for a time. And again, kind of depending on the version of the story, the Ark of the Covenant may have actually stayed on Elephantine Island for a couple hundred years in a Jewish temple that was there. So right now, the Ethiopians claim that they have the Ark of the Covenant at Axum. There is. So that's a really big part of their culture down there. In fact, there is a basically keeper of that ark, and it's like one guy, and a lot of guys don't want that job because their life is dedicated to it. But something's definitely going on there because they age out really fast. They develop cataracts really quick. They develop all these different health problems, and they have to switch them out again. So there's definitely a power there within this ark or whatever it is they have there. But there are also some people who believe that the Ark of the Covenant never actually moved from Elephantine Island, that it may still be hidden there. And it's kind of interesting that since the 1950s, there's been a continuous German archaeological excavation that has been going on there. As far as we know, they haven't uncovered the Ark of the Covenant, but there is under the Temple of Satet. So this is down the hill from the Temple of Khnum, and they're right there next to each other. Okay. There is it's really like a little cave temple. It's underneath. It's in this little cave, and there's a little shrine that's there. Some bowls, some hieroglyphs on. Really, there's one set of hieroglyphs on this one giant boulder that's there, and that's it. It's really simple. It's really plain, but the idea is that in this story with the Ark of the Covenant, if it was there, this is where it was housed, was in this little cave temple.
What's your opinion, your own personal opinion, Mike? Do you believe that the Ark is there, or do you believe that it's a replica that's there?
Well, and that's a good question. Was it the real deal or was it a replica? Did they make that switch? I don't know. Jury's still up. Everybody seems to have claim on it. There's a lot of different ideas as to where the ark ended up. Is it still there in Jerusalem? People think it's buried under the remains of the temple, which of course is under the mosque. It's or Dome of the Rock. It's hard to know where it really is. I mean, if you just go back through what's in the biblical text, they stopped talking about it. Yeah, I did that as a kid after watching Indiana Jones. Okay, where's the Ark? And I'm flipping through my Bible, and they just stopped talking about the Ark. So, and it could even just be, and people don't like to hear this, and it happened a lot in ancient times, that when you invaded somebody's territory, that you gather up all their riches, and you didn't care one iota for their gods, and you would melt down their gold and turn it into something else. So we know that the Israelites went into exile in Babylon and all that. So when they were invaded, did Nebuchadnezzar melt the thing down, or those things happened? And yeah, I know people don't want to think of it that way, and there's a lot of stories about it was hidden before they got a hold of it, and we don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, you're right. To the victor go the spoils, and it very well could have been.
It could have been, but I will say this: this last time that we were in Egypt in April, was the first time that was actually allowed to enter that room. A couple other times I'd been there, and we weren't allowed in, but. But yeah, we got access this time. Couldn't share photos in the book because we were asked not to share photos because you don't want to get people in trouble. They're not supposed to let people in there, but you tip them a lot, and they're like, okay, we'll open the door. It was very quiet, very reverent. Just everybody could like feel the energy in that little room, and whether it had to do with the Ark of the Covenant or something else going on there at the island. Because again, we're under another temple. There was another little pyramid that's right back behind there, and all this stuff, the proposed Stargate and everything. So there was something special about that room for sure, whether it was the Ark of the Covenant or not, because everybody just got really quiet. Yeah.
Huh. I find it fascinating that, there's also, I'm trying to think of the other site where supposedly the Ark of the Covenant exists, and there's two men who stand outside, and they have the exact same issue where there's the premature aging, there's the issue with the cataracts, it's the entire thing, and they go through them quite quickly.
Yeah.
But I wonder, again, there's psychosomatic issues too, where if you believe, again, it's the placebo effect. If you believe that you're under great magical powers or prowess or whatever it is.
Yeah. Are you manifesting it yourself? Yeah.
Right. It's almost like a tulpa effect, right? If you believe there's a ghost there and it you can give it a name or whatever, you'll manifest whatever's there. If you believe you're being subjected to magical powers or something is there and you're being corrupted by magical energies, you could also believe that it's also, manifesting within you, or it's affecting you in some way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that very well could be, if all of like the last 20 guys that have guarded this thing have all developed this, you're like, oh God, I'm going to develop this. And sure enough, you develop it. So Tim, that could very well play into it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
There was also a story that Timothy Hogan told about Elephantine Island. I want to throw it past you as well. Sure. There's something about hieroglyphs and something about an Incan hieroglyph. Have you heard about that?
Mayan.
Mayan, I'm sorry.
The Temple of Satet. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's kind of one of the interesting, and that's why we connect the idea of the Stargate. Was it, did they tick off the Mayans, or did they tick off somebody that maybe a civilization in between that connected the Mayans to the Egyptians, that sort of thing, a common friend, so to speak.
Okay.
Because in the Temple of Satet, as you start heading toward the Holy of Holies, there is a wall frieze of Satet in what looks like a Mayan headdress, putting on an amulet of protection onto the king. Kind of that protection thing before you go into the Holy of Holies, which makes sense. We find that in a lot of different cultures, of course, ancient Hebrew and all that, have some protection before you go into the Holy of Holies, that sort of thing.
Right.
But the headdress that Satet is wearing, it looks distinctively Mayan. And what I also find interesting, and they took a lot of blocks out of Elephantine Island, but they took that one, what's there now as a replica. The original's in the Louvre.
Okay.
They took that piece out of there. And I have photos of both because I've been to both the Louvre with the original and then there on Elephantine Island. But you're looking up at the thing and it's like, yeah, that looks really out of place. And we know that, you look at this Chichen Itza, the pyramid there with Kukulkan and all that, that's a step pyramid. And it's a little different, but it does eerily resemble the step pyramid at Saqqara. There's a similar type of architecture that's there. And so, we find these different connections between cultures across the world that were not supposed to have had these connections. So how did they, did they at one, like, you watch and listen and read Graham Hancock, and you'll say, well, I'm not saying that they had direct communication, but, they had some sort of ancient ancestor, somebody in common that they had once talked to, both of them. And so that's a possibility. Or, we're getting a little more toward this supernatural metaphysical side, saying that, well, it was these Stargates and, there was a way that they were able to, move back and forth because. And when we talk Stargates, it doesn't have to, people think Stargate, they think the movie, they're like, yeah, we're zipping across the cosmos to some other galaxy. Maybe, but you also could have used it to move to another place here on Earth. It doesn't have to be across the cosmos. It could be to another continent here. It could be to another dimension. Maybe there are, the Mayans and the Egyptians were talking to the same interdimensional beings, or again, other points in time and things like this. So yeah, there's a lot of things the Stargates could have been used for.
I was just gonna ask that question, Mike. Is it simply a matter of the Stargates were, one, a way to talk to ancestors, or two, a way to talk to, because we're so quick to, and this is where I have an issue. I'm kind of getting scattershot here, but
right.
We're so quick to give credit to aliens for building pyramids. We're so quick to give credit to somebody else for giving us knowledge, but we're not quick to give ourselves credit for developing technology, for building marvels and wonders of the world, right?
Yeah.
But is it a thing where these Stargates are actually just kind of an intercontinental deal where we're communicating from Mayans to Egyptians, where maybe we're able to transverse from, I step into a Stargate in Egypt and there I am in a Mayan temple, or I can communicate with an ancestor, where I use the Stargate to communicate with an Egyptian ancestor if I'm in Egypt, or if I'm a Mayan, I want to communicate with my Mayan ancestor and get that knowledge from the heavens to build a pyramid. Is it something where maybe we're not giving enough credit to ourselves for building this technology? And maybe there's not an alien influence involved in here, or am I not giving alien credit here?
You've never heard me say the aliens built the pyramids or anything like that.
Right.
No, the humans built it. It's just a matter of which humans, and how did they get the idea? Where did they get the knowledge to be able to do it? How did they develop that to the point where a lot of those techniques we don't have today? We don't know how they moved a lot of these massive, large blocks. And so, when we talk about, it was a civilization that had high technology, we're not talking about they had computers and cell phones and things like that. No, they didn't have that type of high technology, but they had technology that was higher than some of the things that we have today, where, we're like, our biggest crane in the world can't lift this block, but yet somehow they lifted this thing, all kinds of feet in the air and placed it perfectly and all that sort of stuff, in multiple blocks like this. It's just like, it's mind blowing. But so these Stargates, it could have even just, been a communication device. You didn't necessarily have to step through it and suddenly find yourself whisked off to some other place, even across the earth. Maybe, it could have just been, the ancient internet, we're talking with people across, hey, maybe it's like this, we're over a Zoom call right now. It was the ancient way to do a Zoom call, right?
Right.
That's always possible, because or even, speaking with somebody on a different dimensional plane. So at Abydos, we see the depiction in a number of places, but Abydos is a great example because it has several different, what we call Stargate chambers, the chambers within the temple that are labeled just distinctively as Stargates. And then as you enter in the chamber of Ptah Sokar, and there's two Stargate chambers that are in the back there. On the wall, one of the friezes has a depiction of an offering of white cakes. And these were ingested before going into those Stargate chambers. And a lot of people believe these white cakes contain monatomic white gold. And this makes sense because these white cakes came from what they call, it was a misnomer for a while. A lot of people were calling the white cakes themselves mufkuts. And my friend Egyptologist Muhammad Ibrahim, who we do the tours with, was always confused by this. Why are you guys calling these mufkuts? Mufkuts means turquoise. It doesn't make sense for these. Yeah. And so he did a deep dive into this, and what he uncovered was that It was the white cakes from Mufkut's land, from turquoise land in the Sinai area, and that made a lot of sense because in the Sinai Peninsula, we have found over 1,000 ancient mines that yes have turquoise, gold, silver, copper, all these other elements, and so that would make sense that this monatomic white gold would come from there. Well, what's so wonderful about monatomic white gold? Well, in the 1980s, David Hudson, who was basically he was a farmer turned miner turned alchemist. He had this farmland out there in Arizona. Couldn't really do much with. He's I'm going to mine it for gold. And he came across this. He was extracting the gold out of the material. He was discovering this other material along with it. So now he became an alchemist, and it was this monatomic white gold that had all kinds of strange properties to it. So he's trying to get this stuff patented, and they want a weight for it. How much this stuff weigh? And you couldn't weigh it properly. So you'd put the stuff in the pan to weigh it, and then the pan would weigh less. So if you think about it, say your pan is 5 ounces, and you put the stuff in there, and all of a sudden it says it's 4 ounces. Like, what? Wait, it should be more, not less.
Yeah.
So weird things like that were happening, and they would heat it up, and the stuff would like disappear. And which that part isn't too big of a deal because we have other things that you heat up and turn translucent. But the interesting thing about this is that it turns translucent. You have this pile of powder, turns translucent. So let me take like a little spatula and stir it around. Should change the shape and the texture and everything of the stuff in the pan. Cool it back down. It reappears. It's in the exact same configuration as before it was heated up and they stirred around with the spatula. So you've got guys like Hal Puthoff got involved on that. You got the University of Iowa put it in on it, and some other institutions. And so one of the prevailing ideas about this was that this substance defies the properties of space and time, and actually when it's disappearing like that, it seems like it's going into some other dimension. So the whole big thing that they did on this, it's a little bit too much to get into all of it. That's kind of the basics.
Interesting.
So imagine ingesting something like this.
Yeah.
Okay. And all of a sudden your body is heating up these, elements that are now in your body, and you're going into this Stargate chamber with this energy of, the pyramid that's there is harnessing the energy to, power this thing up, all these different things. So is it almost like, this is another idea about these Stargates, is this, a sacred meditation chamber to ingest this, go in there, and like in South America, you have things like ayahuasca, where they're entering, it's a hallucinogen, yeah, but they're entering into these different brainwave states, and they're interacting with these different beings and having these, miraculous visions and things like this. So is it almost like the ancient Egyptians version of that, where they're, traveling to another dimension, or maybe their consciousness is traveling to another dimension and interacting with these beings? So that's another idea for this too.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so and I read that part in the book, and it contradicted a little of what Timothy Hogan had as far as the Stargates being powered by an external force. He had an idea.
Well, that would be like the pyramids, yeah. But if Tim is saying that the pyramids were the Stargate, yeah, we would differ there, sure.
Yeah. Well, it was even.
I'll have to sit down with him and have a conversation about this because he also talks about the arcs in a little bit of a different light.
The arcs, yeah. About the Ark of the Covenant being the and that there are multiple arcs, and that they.
Well, there are multiple arcs. I agree with him on that. Yeah. But a little bit of a different context. It's like fine details, kind of where he and I differ on that. But so the Ark of the So the Ark of the Covenant was really one of the ancient Egyptian arcs. You see all throughout ancient Egypt, they show them in the wall friezes. We actually have a couple of the actual arcs. And so, when the Israelites left Egypt, basically they're just commandeering the same idea. We're going to have an ark for our sacred tablets and all that sort of thing. And so it's the same concept. So to them it was the Ark of the Covenant. They had one, but the Egyptians had a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. And that they're power batteries of sorts. And
there's that idea too, where, kind of the traditional archaeologists, they call them like shrines, that sort of thing. But I mean, they're made of the Aswan rose granite. They basically have like a little pyramid on the top of them. And so, it's like, okay, was that, harnessing the energy, and even Mohammed has a little bit of a different idea that it was really like the energizing chamber where you, yeah, in a way like a battery, but you actually put your religious object inside of it to charge that up and bring that energy of whatever you've charged up within it to another sacred site or something like that. So there's some interesting concepts that we're all, it's interesting because we're all like somewhat on the same page, but we have some details that differ here and there. So
understandable.
That's one of the things when you're diving into these ancient mysteries.
Well, and without an owner's manual, you can't, nobody really knows for sure, right? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so everybody has their theories and with, like I said, without an owner's manual, you can't operate the deal. Right. Yeah.
Well, and that's the wild thing about this. So you have all these hieroglyphs all over the place, right? Not a single set of hieroglyphs talk about how they built the pyramids. So,
yeah.
They either didn't or they didn't care. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, we'll speculate for me for a second here, Mike. Before, as we begin to wrap up the program, why do you suppose that, as you put it, there's all kinds of different hieroglyphs that are on the walls of the pyramids, basically dictating history of different things or how different things are done. But why not put that up there? Why not say this is how we built this guy? Because if you're going to pay tribute to anything, why wouldn't you pay tribute to this great monument that you put out in the middle of the desert?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's why that's one of the reasons why I say that I don't think that the dynastic Egyptians built, like the Great Pyramid of Giza and the really, really large ones. You don't find a record for it. Another interesting thing is you also don't find any records for mummification. They didn't detail that process. So we have ideas based on what we have found as to what they did and how they did it, but they didn't describe that process. And I think that one's more of the case of it was such an everyday thing that they did that it was like, we don't have to write about it. We're doing this every single day. Somebody's dying every day. So, we know the process. Yeah. We don't have to write it down. So, but when you look at the pyramids, that wasn't an everyday thing, so that to me adheres more to the idea that they didn't write it down. I mean, the things that were important to them were like the afterlife journey, which we call the afterlife. To them was just another part of life. And they're, one of the most extensive texts that we find at Edfu is the account of it's their creation text and what they call the homeland of the primeval ones, which is really like the Atlantis story and how the survivors came and established Egypt. So those were the things that were really important to them.
Very true. Very true. Not that I wanted to truncate this at all, but I know you were very excited about your trip to the southwest part of the U.S. and how this related to stargates and portals. Tell me a little bit about the area of the southwest United States that got you really excited.
Yeah, Chaco Canyon. I've always wanted to get to the American Southwest anyway, as I was, becoming a bit of an older adult. But Chaco Canyon was one I always wanted to get to because of all things, it was was Detective video game series, the Tex Murphy series during the 1990s, where one of them actually went to that part of the country and just, dug into these ancient ruins and everything. And, at that point, as a much younger adult, sure, I was familiar with these different, massive archaeological sites around the world, like Egypt, Rome, ancient Greece, those sorts of things. And it was like, whoa, we've got ruins here like that in the United States. Oh, I gotta go. So it was always a draw to me. And so, was it 5 years ago? Yeah, it was like 5 years ago this month that I finally got my first opportunity to visit Chaco Canyon, and it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, you kind of almost have free run of the place. I mean, it's large. There are a lot of different ruins that are there, but Pueblo Bonito, which is the biggest one, I mean, there's some off limits areas, but most of it you can just kind of run around through. It's like, wow, here we are. We got ruins like this in America. But it's a really fascinating location in that, all of these buildings, they're astronomically aligned. You have the petroglyphs that are there that talk about the star people using portals to come down here to Earth to impart knowledge upon the peoples. And it's just, it was absolutely fascinating. So I've been back there a couple times now, and I've kind of explored and investigated more of that corner of our country where you keep finding, all of these. I mentioned Montezuma's Well earlier, and you're finding all these locations that have these ties back to, the more ancient stories of our entire world. So there's, it's not just out there in other parts of the world; it's here in America too.
Well, what's fascinating is in that chapter of the book, your wife was finding things that you were missing, which was great. I mean, she was so astute at finding different clues that you had to keep going back and refinding these wonderful clues about I mean, just different things like star people and different symbols that you didn't know that were there, and it was just, I mean, it's a fascinating read. It really is, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I got to ask you, as far as Chaco Canyon goes, what's the most, I guess, mind-blowing thing that you found as far as here in America that you can line up as far as you didn't know? I mean, you mentioned it before that you didn't know that we had stuff like that in America, but what clue did you find in Chaco Canyon that made you think, well, wow, there really is something out there that's been here and left messages here for us? Yeah.
I mean, aside from the petroglyphs that you find everywhere, Jen is really good. She has that keen eye, and he's like, oh, hey, there's more stuff over there. Oh, and we had to go back the next morning, and that was at Boca Negra Canyon right outside of Albuquerque. And it was very distinctly, when you walk along the trail along the cliff face, star people using the energy to access the portals. It was like, wow, that's really plain and clear. But with Chaco Canyon, it was interesting. So there's this one part on the eastern side of the complex of Pueblo Bonito. And the way that I entered was from the main plaza, and there's this little stairway down, and you kind of almost have to crawl. You crouch down really low, and you're getting following this little passage, and you're kind of dumped out into this room. And most of the stuff there at Pueblo Bonito is, there's, the rooms are bare. They put a little grinding stone there in the middle of this particular room, which I thought was a little out of place. And there's this niche in the wall. Like, okay, what the heck was in the niche? It was kind of interesting. So I'm walking through the other rooms, and all of a sudden, boom, there's this T-shaped doorway that's in front of me. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that makes some sense then, because when you walk into a T-shaped doorway, that's basically designating this is a room or a building or something of reverence. This is high importance. And so it's like, oh, okay, I crawled through the one entrance in a T-shaped doorway here. So this whole series of rooms is important. And I think the main idea, I'm not sure why the little tunnel you had to crawl through, but I think the main idea was you walk through the T-shaped doorway through the series of rooms, and then you have this niche. Maybe there's an idol or something that was there to worship or what have you. So I set up my camera and everything, and I'm talking about the T-shaped doorway and, basically my little discovery here. And as I'm describing this to the camera, I all of a sudden just kind of stop. And it's like 8 seconds of just, it's like, the wheels are turning. I'm basically getting a download and making the connection. Wait a minute. I'm standing in front of a T-shaped doorway. Where else do we see T-shapes around the world? And I'd already been talking about, there's, T-shapes throughout Mesoamerica and all that sort of thing with these doorways. But it's like, this is like the inverse of the T-shaped pillars as we see at Göbekli Tepe. And I'm talking to the camera, like, this may seem just really far-fetched that I'm making a connection from here, from Chaco Canyon to all the way on the other side of the world. in Göbekli Tepe. And yeah, there's definitely a difference in years between the two sites, but that symbolism was able to maintain from all of those millennia. And what I found, and of course I include all of that in the book, and I'd recorded that video like 5 years ago. So the other week, I'm sitting here watching Ancient Apocalypse with Graham Hancock, and there he is at Chaco Canyon. And what does he do? He relates the T-shapes doorways there at Chaco Canyon to Göbekli Tepe. And I'm like, oh, here we go.
So he stole your work.
That's awesome. Yeah,
no, I'm kidding. No.
He's not stealing my work. But it's somebody could. There are plenty of people that would say, "Oh, Graham's watching my stuff," and he's no.
I'm joking.
It's
no. He came to the same.
But it's one of those. Right. It's one of those, and this is when I start talking like eternal knowledge. So kind of. Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, other people call it the Akashic records or whatever. But basically it's that idea that all the knowledge of the universe is right there. And it's just a matter of being able to tune into it at the right time and the right frequency, and you'll get that download of information. So, I don't know when Graham came up with the idea, but basically I tuned into that 5 years ago and got it myself. And so that's great that there's more than one of us that are talking about that. Yeah.
No, when that hit you, when that download hit you, did you get chills? I mean, up and down your spine? And
yeah, well, I was excited is what it was. It's like, oh, wow, boom. And so, on one of my Connecting the Universe classes, I have that clip. It's definitely in the American Southwest area of my Connected Universe portal in the secret library area. But yeah, that was pretty cool.
Absolutely cool. The book is out there. We have a link in the description of this program. Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. Mike, your show. Tell people about the show.
Yeah, Connecting the Universe every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, since we're the end of the year now, things are kind of winding down. Got a couple of December episodes we're breaking for Thanksgiving, and then I'm on the road the first week of December. So we got a couple of December episodes, but of course, January we'll kick back up full on. But yeah, every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. That's we broadcast live on my YouTube channel, the Mike Ricksecker YouTube channel, but then we have our after show, which continues on the Connected Universe portal. So, please feel free to join us there.
Absolutely cool. Definitely will do that. Also, these wonderful trips that you take people on, we'll have a link in the description of the program. The next one is...
Yeah, this time next year, we will just be coming back from Egypt again. So November 2025, we'll be going back to ancient Egypt. It's our Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. So you can go to my website, MikeRicksecker.com, go to the events and tours section, and you'll find it right there. And yeah, come explore with us. It is amazing. We're hitting some places this time that we haven't in the past. The Lahun pyramid, which that was known in the past as the floating pyramid. And the king who built that, Sinruset II, was the father of our very first Stargate king, Sinruset III. So, so it's kind of like the origins of where this line of kings came from that had that Stargate designation.
That sounds fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. All right. Well, folks, I definitely want you to check out everything. Check out the book, check out the show, check out the trip. It's not, God, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. It's absolutely fascinating. Mike, I want to thank you so much for joining us again here on Darkness Radio.
Thanks again, Tim. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. We always have some fantastic conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend. And I wish you a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. I want to thank Mike Ricksecker for being on the big program today. Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt is available right now. We have a link in the description of this program. We've also got a link to the podcast of Mike's, and we also have a link to the trips. I encourage you to check out all three. Mike is a phenomenal researcher, a phenomenal author, an even more phenomenal human being. So I encourage you to check out all of his projects, and please support him. Again, also a phenomenal friend. I appreciate and really thank him for being on this special program today, on the special holiday. and encourage you again to go out and support Mike in all of his endeavors. So thank you, Mike, for being on the big program today. Before I get to just a brief thing of what I'm thankful for, I do want to just throw one note out there. Another friend that I'm really praying for hard right now is Jerry Pauly. I've been a little remiss in talking about this because I was hit quite hard by the news of Jerry's health and the news of his health. He had collapsed actually at a creation con he had taken his wife Tracy to. Jerry's a good friend of the program, and he's done quite a bit for me personally. And I don't bring a lot of personal issues to the program. I don't like to. It's when we get together here on this program, it's my time to entertain you. Jerry's been there for me personally in a lot of good times, a lot of not so good times. And professionally, Jerry's been there for me a lot. No questions asked. Jerry's a phenomenal human being. He just is a loving, caring, giving human being. His wife is phenomenal as well. Jerry and Tracy are two of the best human beings in the world. Of course, Jerry is the host of the Hillbilly Horror Stories podcast. I encourage you to do whatever you can to support that podcast. Jerry unfortunately collapsed last weekend. He was in a coma. He was in a medically induced coma for quite some time. They brought him out of that coma right now, but things don't look good. In fact, when he woke, he told Tracy to expect the worst, which I wish he didn't have that outlook, but maybe he knows something we don't, and I hate to say that. I'm going to do something I don't normally do on this program. There's a reason I don't do this, and normally it comes down to vetting. We actually got took once because someone had given us a bit of a sob story about a GoFundMe. We believed them. We posted a GoFundMe for them, and they ended up conning us. And they used the GoFundMe money for frivolous things. So that's why we don't really post everyone and everyone who comes along with a GoFundMe. We don't necessarily get behind here on the program because we've been conned and swindled before. But I know Jerry, and he's a good friend. And what I'm going to do is in the description of this program, I'm going to put up the GoFundMe link for Jerry and for Tracy. Please, if you can, find it in your heart to help during this holiday season to help Jerry and Tracy. Unfortunately, in this business, there's no healthcare plan. Even though Jerry does have a day job outside of this, it's woefully inadequate. Jerry had a pacemaker, believe it or not, that didn't go off. He had a defibrillator that's implanted in his chest, and when he collapsed, for some reason, it didn't go off. Luckily, he was going to go park the car at Creation Con when he got out of the car. He collapsed, and luckily, there were people there on the scene who knew how to do CPR. That's the only thing that saved his life until emergency workers got to the scene and tried to revive Jerry. The report that his wife gave was that they managed to, even though they had to continue shocking him and keeping him alive till they got him to the hospital, it was touch and go for a long time there. In fact, it's been touch and go since he's been in ICU. It's not been good, folks. And Jerry's had a tough time. He was ventilated earlier in the week. He's off the vent now, and he has spoke to her once. He was conscious for a short time. I'm praying hard for you, brother. I really am. I've been praying for you ever since I got the news. Others have put out prayer and healing requests. I've just been kind of paralyzed by the news, you know. It's been hard for me to hear. But I ask you all to kind of keep praying for Jerry Pauly and his wife, Tracy. Prayers for strength for Tracy, because this is really hard, and for his family. And if you can, and if you can find it in your heart, please donate to the GoFundMe to help the Pauly family so that he can get better. Because I know he's going to get better. Jerry's a strong guy. He really is. He'll pull through this. I know right now he doesn't think so, but I think he will. So we'll leave it at that. On a nicer note, on an up note, I am thankful for a lot of things this Thanksgiving. This is a good Thanksgiving. I'm thankful, first of all, for you, the listener, that's out there listening to this program right now on Thanksgiving, or maybe you're listening to it the day after, maybe a few days after. I'm thankful that you continue to listen to this program, to support this program. And I'm thankful that you tell your friends and your family about it, and people that you love about this program, that you're excited about this program, and continue to spread the word about the program. I appreciate you so much for that. And I'm thankful every day for that. I'm thankful that I'm able to wake up in the morning and be able to do what I do for a living. I'm thankful for my friends and family, and I include you along with that. I'm thankful for life in general. And to be able to get up and live and breathe and be able to do what I do and do what I can for people. I'm a blessed man. So, and I live a life of gratitude every single day. So for me, I don't need one day out of the year to give my gratitude, but I'm glad that I do have it. So I want to state it one more time. I try to state it every week on this program that I thank you for what you give to the show. But I want to thank you one more time on this show for taking the time to listen to the show, give me positive input into the show, because a lot of you do, and continuing to be a positive force towards this show. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you so much for continuing to not only listen to the show, but giving me your positive feedback to the show, and continuing to do so into the future. So thank you so much, everybody. Lots of good stuff coming up into December and beyond. Lots of good guests, both in True Crime Tuesday and Darkness Radio. So I'm excited about that. Boy, you guys are going to be impressed. I'm telling you, we're working hard over here to get good guests in here and good material. If you've got a guest you want to hear, Tim at darknessradio.com. If you have a story idea, either for Dumb Crime Stupid Criminals or for supernatural news, send it in, Tim at darknessradio.com. Can't wait to hear and see what you have for us. So with that, enjoy the holiday. If you're so kind and want to do so, bring some leftovers to a friend or a loved one, or maybe a neighbor that's in need. Do something nice for somebody this weekend. Be a light in someone's darkness. And we'll see you right back here on Tuesday for True Crime Tuesday. For Mally Fox, for Jessica Freeberg, for Beer City Bruiser, I'm Tim Dennis. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening to the best in true crime and paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio.